Hey, this is Ian Spanier, Los Angeles-based portrait photographer. In this video for PPA, I'm going to share with you my workflow after a photo shoot. After completing the photo shoot, remove the memory card from the camera and use a card reader to transfer the image files to your computer. Upon opening this folder, you will see inside where your images are stored. Now, every camera is different, and today I'm working with a Canon camera, so this will follow the steps from a Canon camera only. You might see some differences with your own camera. For Canon, inside the DCIM folder and a folder named 100 EOS R5, all of the images from today's photo shoot will appear. The very first step that I will take here is to rename this folder. Now, I'm always going to name it by the date that the photo shoot took place. Then I'm going to use 3 to 4 arbitrary letters to refer to either the client or the subject of the photo shoot. And then after that, I'll add in the word RAW, referring to raw files. Now that I've renamed this folder, this is a very important step. Not only is this the folder that I'm going to use to download to my desktop before taking the next step of archiving this folder, but it also is going to add an important step in terms of making sure that I don't reformat and lose images from a photo shoot. By renaming the folder in this fashion, when I put this memory card back into a camera and press the play button, the result will be the response of no image on the LCD screen. This is a good check for me to know that this card has been downloaded and backed up in one way or another. It allows me to know that it's safe at this time to reformat the card and then work on whatever the next photo shoot is. If by any chance I see an image when I press play, it means that the memory card was not downloaded and not backed up, and I should not reformat this card. Once I've downloaded this folder to the desktop, I will then take the next step. I'm going to remove the memory card and eject it from my laptop. Once that is gone, I will unplug that card reader and remove it safely. Now, the reason I do this is just in case anything goes wrong. I still have all of those images sitting on a memory card at this time. Now that I've got my folder downloaded to the desktop, I'm going to go ahead to my external drive and copy this folder once again. On that folder, you can see I have my Lightroom catalog. Now, Lightroom tends to be the system that I use for many years now to catalog annually all of my images. Whether you use Capture One or any of the other softwares that allow you to have a catalog, that's what's important. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this folder over to 2025 Lightroom Catalogs folder. As you see, it's copying over onto that drive, and as that is going on, I'll go ahead and open up this Lightroom catalog. Now, one extra tip that I'll give you in terms of if you are somebody that's going to use Lightroom is to always make sure that in your catalog settings, you check the box that says automatically write changes into XMP. This is an important step in order to make sure that all of the metadata that you're using throughout all of your catalog system to apply to each file is actually attached to your files. If you don't click this box, it will not automatically be attached, and therefore you might lose all of that extra work that we're going to do in terms of using metadata in order to make this catalog the most efficient way of finding images as you go year by year, month by month, or day by day, and need to go back and find something. Now that the folder is copied over, I'm going to go ahead and import it into this catalog. So I'm simply going to check import. I'm going to go to that folder. I'm going to find the image folder, and I'm going to go ahead and import it. Now we have the opportunity here to add some of our metadata if we want. I've pre-programmed my copyright for 2025, and I can go ahead and put the name of my subject in here and a couple of other points if I feel like it, just to have that data in there. Now, before I go to the next step, I have an option here. I can either go through all of the images and delete any of the blinks, or maybe a frame where it's out of focus, or all of those things. It just depends how much space I want to save on my hard drives year upon year. Typically, what I will do is go through and eliminate any images that I'm not going to need to keep as backup. In this case, I do want to hold on to everything just in case my client wants me to perhaps swap a head with a different body or change something in post that I might need those files. So I'm not going to delete anything at this time. I am going to go ahead and select all of the images, and then using the quick keys Fn, F2, I'm going to go ahead and rename all of these files. Now, the way that I do the rename is very similar to the way that I named the folder. It's going to be the photo shoot date, the 3 to 4 letters, and then a sequence of up to 5 digits. Once I have that set, I go ahead and hit done. I make sure that my start number is 1. If it is a photo shoot where I have multiple memory cards, this allows me to rename by memory card as well. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. Now you can see how quickly Lightroom renames all of these folders. The next step that I'm going to take is to go ahead and sync the metadata that I want to sync. This is where I'll enter all the information I want attached to the image files. The next step in this process will be to rate my images, which I will do by going through the images and using a star system. 1 star will be my indication of my first edit, 2 stars my second edit, 3 stars my third edit. Then I'll reserve 4 and 5 stars for the client's selections. So here's where I'll go through all of my images. I'll open them up a little bit bigger if I need to check focus or anything else like that. But essentially, this is where I'm going to take the star rating system that's built into Lightroom, as well as many other software programs like this, and go ahead and make my selects that I'm going to present to the client by outputting them as low resolution images. Now, a question I get from a lot of photographers will often be if this is a time where I might throw a watermark on an image. And the answer to that is yes. Usually that is the case. At this time is when I will go ahead and output an image with a watermark, just so that the image is not used in the wrong resolution, unretouched, which I never like, or in any way that I don't want my client to go forward with. At this point, I'll go through the Lightroom catalog and take my selects and make my first retouching adjustments in Lightroom. This is where I'll play around with color temperature, contrast, highlights, all the kind of changes that I'll make. This will also give me the opportunity to try out some images with different color temperatures, black and white, all the options I want to send over to my client. I'll then output my selects in the low-res folder with that watermark that we spoke about earlier, and go ahead and send it over to my client for selects. Now that we have all of our images in our Lightroom catalog and our selections made, we're going to go to the next step, which is to start color coding our folders. Let's go back to the folder on our external hard drive and start the color coding process for all of our folders. This begins the process of understanding the backup status each of our folders are in. So the very first backup that I do, which is to the hard drive that sits on my desktop that is connected to my computer at my home office, I'm going to go ahead and change that to gray in terms of a gray folder. So very simply on Mac, it's holding down the control key while clicking on the folder and changing the label to gray. Gray for me indicates that it's been backed up and imported into my catalog. Now, once that is done, I'll go ahead and copy this onto 2 other hard drives. The first is my second backup hard drive, which is also on my desktop. And in that case, I'm going to just copy the folder over, and I'm going to use a green label for that. So the gray and the green now indicate that this folder has been backed up to my first and second hard drive. Then at that point, I'm going to go ahead and copy it over to a third hard drive, which I'm going to indicate with yellow. And that yellow will be for my external hard drive that is going to go into another location for storage. It's very important to have at least 2 backups of every folder that you have, and ideally 3 at the very least. That third hard drive living somewhere else. So I do this every 1 to 3, maybe 4 months at most, where I'm regularly taking an external hard drive and putting it at my storage unit, which is in another part of town. Now I do this should anything go wrong here at my home location. I also do this so that I have the option to access those files from elsewhere at any time. I just have to go down to the storage unit and pull the hard drive. Now everything has its catalogs, everything has its color coding so that it's really easy for me to find everything. Now that important step of adding metadata to each of the files also allows me to search those catalogs and find my images year upon year whenever I need to find and dig something out of the archive. Fourth and final place that I'll put that folder is if I happen to be traveling at any time and I need the files to be with me, I'll go ahead and copy it onto a travel drive, and at that point I will also color that folder orange, given that most of my hard drives used to be orange, so it's an easy way for me to remember orange is my travel drive. Since I have my folder now backed up to at least 3 different hard drives, I can go ahead and take the original folder that is on the desktop and I can go ahead and delete it. Now, typically what I will do just to be safe is I'll put it in a to be deleted folder on my desktop for about a month, just to make sure that there's no issues. But once it is safe, then I go ahead and fully delete that folder. That is now fully backed up at least 2 places on my desktop and 1 at a 3rd location. Once the final image order is complete, all of those final retouched images will live in a folder with the same system, namely a folder that has the unique date, underscore, and the 3 to 4 letter code, along with a -IO. IO for me stands for image order. It just makes it easier throughout the year to know which folders contain image orders. I'm going to take that folder and copy it onto that same external hard drive into the 2025 calendar year folder. Then I'm going to go back into Lightroom and import by selecting that folder inside the catalog that it's within. At this time, you can add additional keywords or any other information you might want to add in, and just simply click import. Once the import is complete, I will select all of the images, and because they're a web size file, I use a color code of green to indicate that they're only web sized finals. For my large resolution finals, I always color code with blue. It's just an easy system for me to remember and allows me to go into my Lightroom catalog and just by color alone be aware of what images are what. I'll also go one step further by taking this entire folder of images and creating a collection. This allows me throughout the year and at the end of the year, if I want to review all of my shoots and all of the images I created for web only into one folder. So simply by selecting all and then dragging them into this collection folder, it then will now live in a folder of just all of the web finals. I'll do the same thing for final versions that are large resolution as well. Now you might notice that I also code all of my final images with a letter to indicate what they are. For all of my web size finals, I always put an F in front of the unique file name. For the larger size files, I'll put FV like Victor, so final version. And then if there are multiple rounds of retouching on those images, maybe I'll have 01 or FV02, FV03, etc. And then usually an underscore to separate it from the rest of the file name. This also allows me to separate and easily find my final images, final retouched images, and I'll use as well a similar thing for any unflattened files that I might keep, where I'll use the code FRF for full retouched file, which indicates that it's not a flattened file. Those are typically my TIFFs and PSD files. Now, one other thing that people might notice is that all of these are JPEGs. I only do that for web finals. Most of my finals that I output and retouch are high resolution TIFF files, sometimes PSD files, depending on what I'm working on. But for the most part, my files will be separated by TIFFs and JPEGs only. Now, with any folder that's been brought into our catalog, we're going to make sure that we color code the folders just so that we have a consistent style that we understand. So since we have our finals in this folder here, we're going to change it to green and copy it over to our external drive that we color coded green. Same thing with our other drive that lives at our offsite location and make it yellow. And then finally, I generally will put this on the travel drive just for a little while in case my client loses their files or anything along those lines and I'm on the road. I can always deliver to my clients this way, still having access to the files, not making them wait until I get home. I'll do this for about a month or two at most, and then at that point, it's going to be something I do have to pull from the archive. Now, if you ever find yourself in a situation where your final images, for whatever reason, did not contain the keywords, there's a couple ways we can deal with this. Our keyword suggestions might still hold that information in this palette section here, which you can simply click and add those keywords back into your file. The other way to do that is to go back to your raw folder of images, to which does still contain all those keywords because that .xmp file is sitting right there with your catalog. Select your final folder as well, and then you can simply select one image from your raw files and then go and select all of the rest of the images. Click on sync. Make sure that all of the information is here in the synchronized metadata section. And if everything is there, go ahead and click synchronize, and that will add that information to all of your files. You can go back to your IO folder and confirm that it is in fact with all of the images from that photo shoot. Let's do a quick review of everything we talked about in this video. First, you're going to transfer your images to your computer, rename the image folder on the memory card, then copy that folder to your desktop, import your images into your catalog, output your low resolution images for your client or your high resolution images for retouching. Copy this folder to drive number 2, copy then to drive number 3, and once again, color code your folder. Copy to a travel drive, and then repeat this process of copying to different drives with the same color coding system for all image folders. Now let's review the image catalog. Use the star rating to make your selects. Color code your finals for easy location. Rename your finals with a coding that you can remember. And last tip, I make a new catalog for every calendar year to keep the catalog working in optimal performance. Once again, this is Ian Spanier for PPA. Thanks again for joining us. I can't wait to share more tips and tricks with you guys in our next video.